Hello, I'm Dr. Thomas McCluskey, a postdoctoral researcher in the graduate school. Graduate students are often required to give presentations in class, at conferences, and during job interviews, among many other contexts. Giving a successful presentation requires balancing many different elements, figuring out how to present complicated research or deciding the best ways to share abstract ideas can be intimidating, especially if you haven't given many presentations before and aren't comfortable with public speaking. In this workshop, we'll discuss both content and delivery strategies for successful presentations so you can be sure your voice is heard. First, giving a successful presentation requires a thorough understanding of your audience and the context in which you're speaking. An academic conference and a Thanksgiving dinner conversation have different expectations for speakers. Consider what decisions you need to make about how you present your information based on what your audience already knows about your subject and why they need to know it. For instance, at a Thanksgiving dinner, a family member may know very little about what you study and may be asking out of interest, wanting to chat about what you're doing. In a job interview, the interviewer may know less or more than you do about a subject, but they really want to see how you think about your research and make decisions. When giving a talk at a conference or in your department, the audience might already know about your subject, but are just looking for your unique observations and new information that your research adds to the field. As you prepare for a presentation, consider which kind of audience you'll be addressing and how much information they'll need to understand your argument. Remember, clarity is not the opposite of intelligence, and accessibility is not the opposite of nuance. Even the most sophisticated research can be presented to different kinds of audiences. Regardless of your audience, remember, all good research answers a question or solves a problem. Being specific about what problem you're solving and what question you're answering will go a long way towards making your argument clear for any audience. Rhetorician Lloyd Bitzer described an exigence as an imperfection marked by urgency. For Bitzer, an exigence was a problem or question driving a rhetorical text's argument. Presenters should understand what problem or question is most important for their specific audience and what constraints and resources are available in this given moment. Asking what information your audience already has and what they might lack can help you get a better understanding of the rhetorical situation. You should consider the exigence, audience, constraints, and resources of the rhetorical situation to persuasively present your work. Second, you should consider which organizational structure makes sense and is appropriate for your audience. Research suggests that science presentations should begin with an attention-getting hook first. Next, present your thesis, or the one sentence you want your audience to remember if they remember only one. It is your main conclusion, perhaps stated in slightly less technical detail than at the end of your presentation. The main idea should be followed by a preview of your presentation's main points. Such an approach can also work for non-science presentations. As University of Leicester researchers argue, an ideal talk structure includes a welcoming and informative introduction, a coherent series of main points presented in a logical sequence, and a lucid and purposeful conclusion. Thus, considering how to get your audience's attention, what your main points will be, and how you'll end your talk with conviction are all essential elements of presentation structure. Third, once you've adapted to your audience and organized your thoughts when crafting your presentation, you should turn to both verbal and nonverbal delivery strategies to speak as clearly and persuasively as possible. An initial problem to consider is verbal fillers, the like words and phrases that don't add any meaningful content to your presentation, but can distract from your message. Communications expert Lisa Marshall suggests recording yourself while speaking for 5 minutes a day for a few weeks. She explains you need to be able to hear your disfluencies in your mind before you blurt them out. One strategy to combat verbal fillers is a strategic pause. Researchers Ray Anthony and Barbara Boyd argue a pause is a form of oral punctuation that can help your audience reflect on what you just said. In a way, sudden silence, especially if you've been using a quickened rate of speech, has the same effect of a sudden loud noise. It alerts your audience and makes them attentive to what you say next. Thus, don't be afraid of silence as a way to eliminate verbal fillers, because doing so will help with clear and engaging delivery. Once verbal presentation strategies are in hand, consider the value of purposeful nonverbal communication in the form of gestures and body language. In an online environment in which direct interaction with audiences are much more difficult during presentations, nonverbal communication is even more important. Research suggests that as much as 70 to 93% of all communication is nonverbal. This suggests that most of what we're communicating is not what we're saying at all, but how we're saying it. Therefore, gestures and body language deserve careful attention when preparing for a presentation. Remember that gestures, like verbal language, should be purposeful. Gesturing consistently and without purpose, with no connection to what you're saying verbally, wastes a precious communication resource. It is better to not gesture at all than to gesture without purpose. A simple exercise to practice this lesson is to have a conversation for 5 minutes without gesturing at all. It's incredibly challenging. You'll become aware of how often you gesture without thinking about it. Similarly, recording your presentation and watching it back without any sound will help showcase what overused gestures are a distraction and which ones are compelling for audiences. Gesturing with purpose can help you conversationally and persuasively engage your audience during your presentation. Determining who your audience is and how to adapt to your presentation's rhetorical situation can lay the foundation for a persuasive and compelling presentation, especially when coupled with smooth verbal and nonverbal delivery strategies. In this workshop, we discuss strategies for adapting to your audience, as well as how to eliminate verbal fillers and practice engaging, purposeful gestures. Please visit the Graduate School Writing Center for additional support on writing and oral communication activities.